Join me, Elizabeth Marshall, as we take a road trip through the South African psyche, taking you to the edge of society's norms and beyond. It's time for Tales from the Edge. I've heard the expression, Pandora's box once opened can never be closed. This is exactly what Laramie Damstra opened when rummaging through his parents' cupboards.
Dad, these are some photographs from that box that you and Mom had. And Mom doesn't know who these are. She's sure they come from your side of the family. Who's this chap?
Yeah, that's me when I was about 9 years old.
Laramie quickly discovered that many of the people in these hidden family photographs were unknown even to his dad.
Okay, look, it must be the 20s. Her name will give us a clue, Dad, about where she came from, because remember, we have got her full maiden name. Her name was Julia Lavinia Rudolph.
It's time to reveal Julia's secret. This is where the search for his roots began. Laramie was determined to put names to the faces in the photographs he had seen with his dad. His grandmother, Julia, had, however, left the family a few clues to their identity.
But behind this picture here of Julia and Mello was the information I needed. Because it said here, taken on my 38th birthday, 8th of March 1944. So I had a date that I could send a request off to Home Affairs. And of course I did that straight away. I was very excited to get that date because my dad said he couldn't remember her birthday. And when the birth certificate came back, this was the birth certificate.
Once receiving her birth certificate from Home Affairs, he realized to his surprise that Julia, his grandmother, was born of mixed race.
It didn't even enter my mind to think about that my mother was colored.
It also confirmed that her maiden name was Rudolph. This led Laramie to the most basic of research resources, the telephone directory.
Very nice. Dad's going to see if he can find out who Julia's family are. Because there are quite a few Rudolphs on the telephone book. Maybe one of them will know. Hello, my name is Laramie.
After much searching, and one would imagine some pretty high phone bills, Laramie got in touch with an elderly lady, Eleanor Fagaji, who as a child used to play with his grandmother. She asked Laramie if he knew that Julia still had two living siblings, her sister Ruth and her brother George.
She told me that there was a cousin of Julia that was still alive who could possibly put me in contact with her family. She didn't know, she was a bit vague, she didn't know much more, but she said I must contact Ellen Daniels, and she told me she stays in Bot River.
Hy wil met nou by my weet, hy wil net geweet het, wat is sy ouma? As hy brein is, en as hy Jood is, of wat? Toe sê ek van nee, sy's brein. Maar ek sê, sy's my niggie. Sy paal het geweet wat, dat hulle brein is nie.
And she remembered the family, the Rudolph family. She was born in the 20s, so she didn't really remember my grandmother Julia, but she knew the story, and she knew Julia's siblings.
George and Mary, Julie en Ruthie en Iva. George het ek nou goed geken, George het ek nou by goed, en vir Mary en vir Ruthie het ek geken. Ek nou nie vir Julie geken nie. Maar sy wil my net wit gewees het.
Ellen asked me, she said, do I know that Julia's brother and sister are still alive?
Laramie and his dad were elated to discover that George's son Carl lived just up the road from them. It was time for him and his dad to make a quick road trip.
George we contacted through his son Carl, and George lived in Cornetline in Retreat, and I managed to speak to him on the phone. Of course he was very old when we met him. He was in his middle 80s, and he had had a few strokes, But we did arrange a meeting, my dad and I, with George, and he came to our home, and we showed him some photos of people that we didn't know who they were. And of course he identified them, and he was very emotional. You know, when we picked him up in Cornet Line, because we went to fetch him for the afternoon, tears just welled up in his eyes. And my dad was so surprised because George looked just like his mom. You know, there was a very strong family resemblance.
How did you find my dad?
And I think some of the photos we've got of Julia he took. And did he ever speak about his sister Julia?
He never whatsoever, never mentioned him. He used to fight for people politically. When he died, only one person, only one.
Really?
Only one. Nobody else. He helped a lot of people too.
What was his ideals? Well, what was he fighting for?
He was actually fighting for, he was an ANC.
Apartheid, he was against apartheid.
That was he was fighting for.
Now George, Julia's brother, was already a very old man when Laramie and his father had eventually met him. But Ruth, who was looked after by Julia as a little girl, was still alive and well, but living in Australia. And so began the process of letter writing that would page by page reveal the true story of what happened to Julia and why she had left her family to live with apartheid's white elite.
Dear Laramie, many years ago I had a premonition something would happen. Through your determination you've got to the roots. I am proud of you for doing what you did. In my days I could never ask questions. Apartheid divided many families. My father wasn't just a tailor, he was a ladies and gents high-class tailor. After 7 years my father remarried again. Then he sent for us. Julia could make good hats too. She made 3 hats for my stepmother.
These are from Julia. She really likes you. I hope you like them. I wonder what it is.
Really? She sent me a gift? Can I open it?
Yeah, look.
They were made of chiffon cloth, summer hats. A wide brim, black with red cherries, apple green with pink roses, and a pink chiffon hat. We were that family that would never interfere in her life. It was her happiness. Her life with us died, but the love for her lived within our hearts until she died.
Oh, do you like it?
I love
Oh, Julia is so clever.
it. Love it, but I want
so
to try on the other one.
Just try
also.
this one. Let's see how you look. Wow! Wow! Oh, you look so beautiful. Come.
Ruth told Laramie she and Julia were inseparable when they were little girls, and they used to play together on Cape Town's white beaches. Julia's signature was always a bright red umbrella and a picnic basket laden with goodies. Life seemed to be idyllic, but unbeknownst to Ruth, Julia was hiding a dark secret. A secret that would rip the family apart forever.
I said I'm pregnant.
What? You pregnant?
Yes, I'm
Do
sorry,
you
Dad.
know what I have sacrificed all these years?
I
Making
know, but-
clothes for all the people.
I said it was a
So that
mistake.
I can send you to school so that you can be decent.
Didn't you hear what I said? I said it was a mistake.
It can't be a mistake.
Now, by today's standards, an unwanted pregnancy may seem trivial. But in the 20s, with a very religious, patriarchal man as her father, it must have been more for Julia to bear than she could handle. Julia was forced to leave home. Her father, devastated by the fact that his daughter had not lived up to his high expectations. This was the beginning of the rift that would deepen between the two of them. Julia had met a wealthy white architect. Their meeting was one for the silver screen. Across a crowded street, their eyes met, and it was fireworks.
It appeared that Julia had left her family behind. And, when I spoke to my dad, he didn't know of any family. But when I spoke to the other side of the family, they had all had limited contact with Julia through the years.
Julia's secret life as a colored woman as part of a white society stayed close to her heart, but she never lost complete contact with her family. Obviously, feeling like a fish out of water in a community that would ostracize her if they found out who she was and where she was from, and needing some form of family contact over the years, she decided to take her children to her father to get suits made for them.
And Julia could have taken the children to any tailor to have their clothes made, but she chose her father. And perhaps at the time he had his tailor shop in District 6, which gave her an opportunity to connect to her past and to take the children to see their grandfather and for him to see them.
I just brought my boys here for some fittings. They need some new trousers and suits. Well, that's Carl.
The sad truth is, though, that it was never revealed to the children that this was their grandfather that they were meeting for the very first time.
Boys are big, huh?
And of course they were young enough not to really know what was going on, because right now if you ask my dad, does he remember going to the tailor shop, he'll say no, he doesn't. But of course he was there, and Ati could look at his grandchildren, but of course he couldn't hug them.
So, how old are you?
I'm 10.
You're 10, eh? Okay. And what class are you in? What standard are you in?
Standing.
You're standard 4. What a clever young man. You've got very clever children, huh? Madam, you are very clever children.
Yes, I would seem to think so.
Okay. Must come from your family background, I'm sure.
But perhaps he shared a little joke with Julia, and they could connect, intimately on another level, without the children even picking it up. So I think that for Julia, that was very important, because then she could take her kids to see her father.
I think I'll make it 27, seeing that he's a young, growing man.
It was really nice of him to have made suits for us, but it would have been nice to have known more about him. Yeah, it would have been wonderful to have known that he was my grandpa. It would have made me quite happy.
And you say you want trousers and jackets for your
Yes, please. They grow up so quickly these days.
Yes, they do, don't they? Before you know it, they're grown. As always. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Say thank you, Mr. Rudolph. Thank you, Mr. Rudolph.
Okay, thank you, boys. It's really nice to meet you, young gentlemen. Okay?
I'm sure we'll come back again, won't we? Yes.
Well, I'll give you a call from the shop on the corner and let you know. Maybe you should leave your telephone number for me, if it's okay with you.
It wasn't only her father that Julia kept in contact with over the years, whilst living in white society. She also maintained a clandestine relationship with her brother George, who had become somewhat of a revolutionary, a fighter for equal rights over the years. The The irony here seemed to be that this freedom fighter kept the true identity of his sister's secret almost until his grave.
So I spoke to Father the other day.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
I went to the tailor shop and took the boys, for some new trousers and suits, and I think he was actually glad to see me.
Oh, great, great.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the boys didn't know who Dad was.
No, they didn't. But I did tell them to greet him, so they do have nice manners.
Okay, good, that's good. Are you planning on telling them anytime soon?
No, George, not at this stage. You know the circumstances, I can't tell them now.
But Julia's secret was almost revealed. Ruth's letters recount one such incident.
My uncle, my father's sister's husband, whom we lived with in Houston, went to look for work in Cape Town. While walking the streets, he happened to see Julia in one of the busy streets in the city. She never saw him, but he followed her on the bus till she reached her home. He wrote down her address and he went home. He then sent a letter to Mello asking him if he knew that his wife was a colored girl. That he must go to 101 Canterbury Street, District 6, to find out himself. We were living with my father again. Miller, I recall, was a tall, handsome gentleman, just like the photo you sent me. When I went inside, I overheard my father telling my stepmother about the letter that Mello received.
Yes, Mello, I'm in here.
Julia. What is this?
Where did you get this?
I get this from your uncle.
What uncle?
Julia, what have you been trying to tell me? Are you lying?
Where? Who? I don't know what they're talking about.
What's this thing?
I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about.
Are you trying to play me?
Miller, please believe me. I'm not lying.
Are you trying to embarrass
No,
me?
I'm not trying to embarrass you. Please believe me. I don't know you.
I believed you all this time, and now this. I see you, woman.
I'm begging you. I'm not lying to you. I'm begging you. Please believe me. Miller, please believe me. I don't know where you got this from, and I don't know this person.
Don't tell me this again.
Miller, please. I don't know what they're talking about. This is not true. I tell you what. You go to this address tomorrow and you go ask them yourself. I don't know them. Please believe me. You can go ask them yourself. I don't know them. I promise you, they won't know me.
You realize, woman, I love you. What are you doing to me?
Julia, obviously now terrified of being discovered, dropped a note off at her father's house, explaining the situation to him and how she needed his help. Ruth's following letter told Laramie about the day that Julia and her husband arrived to confront Julia's father about his daughter's identity.
One afternoon, I must have been about 10 years old, when a car stopped at our front gate while I was playing outside. A gentleman got out of the car and went to our front door. I was bouncing my ball and I could see Julia in the car, but she kept her eyes down. She was reading her book.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
After quite a while, my father and Miller stood on the stoep.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm Mr. Dunstra. Pleased to meet you. Hi. You're Mr. Rudolph? That's right. Yes, I'm so sorry. You see, I've got a bit of a problem. You see, we received this letter wherein it is claimed that my wife, Mrs. Mumakardia, is related to you.
Do you know this person?
No.
You have never seen this?
No, never. No. I don't
because
know.
I was wondering, perhaps you might.
Sorry, sweetheart.
Don't you know each other?
No, I don't know her.
You sure?
I noticed my father shook his head as if saying, I don't know her. Miller left the house and drove off. It was very difficult for Julia after her husband died, because he died in January 1945, and back then not many people worked. Julia didn't work. She was a housewife. She looked after the children in the home, and for her to earn a living and look after the kids, it was just after the war. My grandfather had used most of his capital to survive, because of course architects don't have work during wartime, and there was very little money left in the estate to carry them through. Unfortunately, she died young, because I think that she had enormous stress, having to cope with dealing with the fact that I suppose she may have felt a bit like a fish out of water.
Ja, ek dink niks daarvan nie, want ek meen, dit is verby. Ek het dan geken nie, en ek dink nie, as ek nou van geken het, dan sal ek miskien iets daarvan gevat het, maar ek het haar nou nie geken nie. Maar ek dink haar man het geweet sy is brein. Haar man. And I can't fire it.
She always said she wanted to tell us something, but I really don't know what it was all about. But then she died in 1954, and then of course it was too late. In retrospect now, maybe she was wanting to tell us a life story and a history where she came from.
This box is what the District 6 Museum did when they translated my file. It was just a file of papers and photographs, and what they wanted was an interactive box, something that gave the feeling that you were unpacking a story, and that's why it's got different layers. The first thing, of course, that was important was that the box could open up, and it would reveal something. You weren't quite sure what it was, so the sides fall down. You can take it apart, and then you get an inkling as to something that you're not sure, and then as you unpack each box, the story becomes clear.
Julia's secret, it seems, is not only a story of genealogy, but also one of self-discovery, self-identity, and most importantly, the ties that bind.